not possible. And I talked to a lot of home builders, large national builders that are really struggling with building again. Not only is land hard to find right now, but they really can't make it pencil. It just does not pencil. You cannot build a building like this for what you could sell these units at. So new construction is not something that we're going to see a lot of, especially in a building like this. Single families, probably, depending on market, but when it comes to a project of this size and magnitude and quality, it's just not happening anymore.
You know what, I'll finish that too. Typically when we do feasibility studies, we look at a variety of different variables, including where would that project be relative to new construction, where would that project be relative to the resale market. Typically, you would expect to see about a 15% premium over the resale market for new construction. And what we found about 2 years ago, is that the position that most construction lenders wanted that project to be was right about in the mid-range of the resale market. When the foreclosure status got overwhelming, when we got to a point where we were at 40 and 50% foreclosure in some market areas, the new home builder, because they have to sell at an absorption rate more than, they can't just hold the unit on the market for 120 days like you can if you're a resale seller. So because of the number of foreclosures that were entering the market, the new home builder had to ratchet that price point down even more. And so it is not unusual to find the new home price line to be well below the resale market right now. And again, when you're looking at a building like this at 60% or 65% of replacement cost, it's just unbelievable. Now, what we're also seeing is that no builder that I work with is going to be building podium construction because the construction costs are too high, exactly what you're saying. So the higher density programs are going to be slower to come back onto the market than the stick frame construction.
I think it's also easier to start and respond to the market that way. When you're building stick-built houses, single-family detached, and the market slows down, you can stop building. If you started a building like this, you can't stop building. It just keeps going up, and then you've got to work through that. I want to talk a little bit about the challenges that are facing us now, especially on the refinancing side, the money side. So. I'm going to just point to this end of the table.
We'll have Craig take that one.
Okay, so let's just start out with an assumption that it seems that a lot of people are having a hard time refinancing their houses, and that perhaps the banks are being very selective. How do you look at that right now? Is there a tangible difference in the way that lending is being conducted these days?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been in the business for, as I mentioned earlier, for 21 years. So I was back in the days of, I started in '89, and that was really when it was W-2s, tax returns, pay stubs, the full 9 yards. And during the course of those years, it kept consolidating to really the point of where if you had a pulse, then you got a mortgage, and it got almost ridiculous. With everything we've gone through in the last 24, 36 months, we've seen things completely go back to where it was back in the early 90s, late 80s, or before. I think what banks really want to do, I know Wells Fargo really wants to make sure that they're a fair and responsible lender. They want to make sure that people are going to be able to afford their homes, not get into situations that they can't afford and be forced into a situation where we're seeing foreclosures or REOs, things of that nature. The other thing that we're seeing now with the whole full documentation situation coming across is fraud. Fraud is starting to happen again. Nevada used to be the top state for fraud. California has now moved into it. And I don't think that's necessarily as significant in Northern California as you would find it in pockets of Los Angeles and other parts of the state. However, the fact remains that it's starting to take place again, and this is because people are they're looking for a quick deal. or they're looking, or they're completely desperate. So I think, yes, lending has gotten to be very, very particular about reviewing documentation, making sure that everybody's got the ability to qualify, repay the loan as the terms dictate. I don't think it's I don't think it's a detriment to the consumer. Absolutely, it's a real pain in the rear. Getting through the process these days, there's no joke about that. No loan is really easy at this point, but there's a method behind the madness. It's really for the consumer's protection, it's for the bank's protection, and it's so we don't run into this whole mess that we've gotten ourselves into over the last several years.
Carol, some advice. How can someone who wants to be a buyer in this current market come out ahead? How can they participate in this new market?
Well, I think it depends on the market that you're looking at. So let's start with foreclosures and short sales. Probably in the East Bay, you have some of the pockets that are the most active in the nation. So whether you're in Hayward or Richmond or Dublin or Fremont or any of those areas, very low inventory. Obviously, what works and what the banks like is all cash, 10-day close as is. That's usually the champion of what works out there. And why does that work? Well, because investors come in, they absolutely want no value in that market. That's absolutely what they're looking for. They know that if they buy that property, it'll cash flow from day one, so they can rent it, and basically they will have a positive cash flow, or they can hold it and flip it. There used to be a 90-day flipping rule that HUD had that said that if you sold the property or bought it and someone else came in and needed a loan, you had to wait 90 days to do that. But that's been gone away now, so now you can buy it and basically flip that property pretty recently, so they'll make some appreciation. Sometimes they'll hold it, rent it, and they'll hold it for 3 to 5 years, and they will know that that property will be worth more just because the market is so devalued at this time. I think in the foreclosure and short sale market, you have to be able to understand that you need to be able to produce quickly, and all cash really works. If you come in and you're going to be a buyer and you need a loan in that market, then you better have a great FICO score, be able to get that loan, and realize that you probably will be competing against multiple offers, which means that you need to probably have more cash. If you're in the middle tier of the market, which is probably anything here from maybe 400,000 up to 800,000-900,000, that's a pocket of the market that's going to be very hot this coming year. Why? Because buyers see value there, and they're willing to come in now and start to pay for it. They realize that interest rates will tick up, that those markets have stabilized and are close to bottoming out, and so they want to get in because those are the best school districts, the nicest neighborhoods, good lifestyle. And what we're seeing now, unbelievably, is that 30% of those markets are all cash buyers. And people that come in have to have great FICO scores, put a lot of money down if you want to get in. The one pocket that's probably still adjusting is the higher end, and the higher end can be anything from 1.5 to 5 million. The reason why that basically is readjusting is because that market has changed enormously. It used to be the market that no matter when you bought it, it would always be worth more the next year, so people didn't worry about it. But think of what's happened to that market. A lot of people are holding back on delay because of the economy. Some people have lost their jobs. You have people that bought at the height of that market and they find they have to sell now. You're beginning to see foreclosures and short sales in that market. So that market that always was so pristine now is basically having some of the corrections that the other markets have gone through. So in that market, if you're a seller, you have to be very realistic about your pricing. We're also seeing in that market that there's a lot of cash buyers, and those that basically buy it and have a loan, they're putting 40% down. Their average mortgage rate is about 7%. And here's the way the buyer thinks in that market. I will come into that market. In that market, they want a deal. They think there's value. Sure, there was. There'll be value in the future, but right now they're looking at a market that's adjusting. So they come in, they want to look at realistically priced properties, so you can't overprice in that market and test and try to play a game there, because they will either not buy, they will either pay cash and expect a discount, or they will wait out this market and go and rent. So I think you have to be very smart about how you buy. You have to know what buyer you are, what kind of a seller you're facing, who your competition is, what is the inventory days on the market, what is the appraisal going to show in that market, because you may be in a multiple offer and be willing to pay over list, but will the appraisal come in to match that? And so you have to have all your ducks in a row and really have a good understanding of the market you're walking in, because that determines as a seller the strategy and positioning you need to get out and what you need to do to make a smart decision getting in.
So, Leonard, I just want you to know that the next question was going to be for you, but I'm going to give it to Craig so that you have to follow her again. Unless, of course, you'd like to say, oh, Carol.
Oh, he's ready. He's ready. Let Leonard go. Go, Leonard.
Go ahead.
Go.